Would you believe me if I told you that a driver who has only scored 38 points and was bested by his teammate by 3 points has missed out on 21 potential points, moving him from 38 to 59. Yeah, that's a lot of lost positions for the championship in the constructors and the drivers. Moving Esteban Ocon from 15th to 10th and Haas from 8th to 6th, which would have given them millions of dollars in prize money. Hello everyone, and today I'm going to be telling you the story of the unluckiest driver in the 76th season of Formula 1. In Australia, Haas had some issues, but nothing exactly unlucky. At the second race of the season in Shanghai, Haas had fixed the issues that had plagued them in Melbourne, Ocon scoring a 5th place finish after a very nice overtake on Andrea Kimi Antonelli. What you'll start to see is that the first few races of the season were very back and forth, between having good pace and being very far down the order. For example, in Japan, Ocon underperformed with a P18 finish on pure pace, and the very next race in Bahrain, he finished 8th with good pace and a great strategy from Haas, fighting with the title contender of Max Verstappen for most of the race. But it once again would fall all apart in Saudi Arabia with a P14 finish, going 49 laps on hard tires that he was concerned would have a puncture at the end of the race, which is extremely scary around a circuit like Jeddah, but thankfully he managed to make it to the end with no issues. He and his car's pace would return to form a bit in Miami. Ocon would qualify P9, but would fall back in the race. He did manage to have a very entertaining and fair battle with Lewis Hamilton though. In Imola, Haas would have their worst qualifying of the year, besides Australia. Ocon would go on a very aggressive strategy by pitting on lap 1, which wasn't looking too great later on in the race, but it wouldn't end up making a difference in the end, as Esteban Ocon's first stroke of misfortune would strike on lap 28, retiring from the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix with an air intake failure. At the jewel of the Formula 1 crown, Ocon ran incredibly well, finishing P7 after qualifying a great P8, and Monaco continued to be one of his best races on the calendar. And once again, the trend would continue at the following race, it going poorly for him, finishing P16 at the Spanish Grand Prix. Thankfully, the next few races would go well, with a good drive from P15 to P9 in Canada, and another great race in Austria, finishing P10 after a P18 qualifying. Things were looking very positive in qualifying at Silverstone, where Haas brought an upgrade. The pace of the car looked very impressive, Haas finishing 3rd and 7th in Q1. On the first lap of Q2, Ocon was 0.2 away from Ollie, but it would all fall apart as all the other drivers went out for their final laps. But as Ocon drove out of the pit lane, trying to get into Q3 for the 3rd time this season, Verstappen rounded the first corner. Ocon's race engineer would get on the radio telling him that Max was behind. Unfortunately though, it was too late and Ocon had to lock up the tires severely to avoid blocking Max. This would completely ruin his final run, though somehow he did still improve on his previous lap. Even though it was an eventful race, he wasn't able to make his way up the field and made some unfortunate contact with Behrman, sending them both into a new sport called synchronized teammate spinning in Formula 1. Yeah, I think it'll catch on. They did have a chance to finish in the points before that though, because they were both behind the Williams of Albon, who finished 8th in the end. Even though things went downhill last weekend, an important thing was that the car performance looked superb, and that did continue into sprint qualifying at Spa-Francorchamps when Esteban and Ollie qualified P5 and P7, their strongest qualifying session of the year. And it would continue into a strong sprint race, both finishing where they started, scoring important points for the team. Rain was predicted for the race on Sunday, so some teams took a split strategy for the setups. Behrman was going for the wet, higher downforce setup, and Ocon put on the dry, lower downforce setup. They couldn't match their sprint qualifying, both going out in Q2, Ocon missing out by just 0.02 of a second. It would continue to worsen in the race. As it started to rain, Esteban was much slower on his dry setup, and he told the team that he was letting Ollie through. This would backfire for him slightly though, for as the track dried, some of the drivers came into the pits, switching to slick tires. Once they finally became faster, Haas had Ocon stay out 2 laps too late, and once Ocon did pit, they by mistake put old tires onto the car. From there on, it was an uphill battle. Even though he had much more pace than the cars around him, he couldn't do much because of the difficulty of overtaking that weekend. Ultimately, he finished 15th, well off his target. The Hungaroring was back to normal, without any misfortune, just a poor race. The Netherlands was looking like an awful race weekend for Haas, lining up P18 and in the pit lane. Both cars stayed out very long, line astern, working together to keep all the other cars behind, sitting in a good position if anything happened. Ocon finally came into the pits, and halfway down the pit lane, a safety car came out because of a crash between Antonelli and Leclerc. This essentially ruined his race. He fell down to 14th position, while Behrman, who was right behind him before he pit, was in 11th. He managed to fight his way back to P10, but Behrman finished 7th and moved up to 6th after Antonelli's penalty. Nothing would happen in Monza, nothing controversial at all. In Baku, it may look like there was no misfortune in sight, just a little bit of a strange strategy, pitting on lap 1 and going to the end of the race. But yes, in fact he was. After his disappointing qualifying, he revealed that his lap was impeded by a braking issue. Later on, he would be disqualified anyways, so his day would go from bad to worse. The pace of Ocon and Haas looked very strong in free practice, this typically being one of Ocon's best circuits, but also most unlucky. 2023 running in P5 with some great overtakes, engine failure. In 2022, braking issues in qualifying meant he started P17, while Alonso started 5th, was making up positions, but no. Engine failure. And 2018 with his teammate at the first corner. So, will it continue in 2025? Yes. Ocon in qualifying would have a belt issue on his first lap, then on his second, Pierre Gasly's engine failed, as the Renault engine loves to do in Singapore, and a yellow flag came out, losing him 0.3 of a second, putting him all the way down in P17. With those 0.3, he would have easily been safe in P11. And in the race, he wasn't able to make up many positions because Singapore is a very tough place to overtake. At the Circuit of the Americas, Haas brought their final upgrades of the year and the regulations. Coda is typically not one of Esteban's best tracks, but going into the sprint, things were looking hopeful because of the upgrade. On his first lap in SQ1, he made a mistake at the first corner with a huge snap of oversteer, and on the second, he was sent out much too late and missed the flag with a few other drivers. The sprint was going well, he gained a lot of positions at turn 1 because of the chaos at the front of the field, and then later on completely turned into Lance Stroll, ruining both of their races. And then a brutal race where he was put on the hards, which were by far the worst tire, ending up P15 and pretty disappointed with the strategy. At the Mexican Grand Prix, the Haas looked fast, but Ocon didn't manage to get to Q3, missing out by 0.03. The race did not go well either, with Haas sacrificing him a little bit to help out Ollie, as they should with a podium on the line. Overall, he did have a pretty good drive though, getting up to P9 from P12. In Brazil, the Haas's pace looked less impressive than Mexico, but still had good race pace. In SQ1, he was impeded by 12 cars, which was very unfortunate. I have never seen a car overtake more in one lap, except in NASCAR and Hungary 2021. I guess Ocon has a thing for that. The sprint went well, keeping clean and moving up some places. The qualifying went very badly though, so they decided to start from the pit lane and change some of the setup for the race. After the collision between Leclerc, Antonelli, and Piastri, he picked up some debris and unluckily only got a puncture right after the VSC came out and lost about 12 seconds. And considering he was only 2 seconds off of P7, it made a huge difference in the end. The wet qualifying in Vegas was going very well, running extremely well in Q1, but at the end of Q2, he finished his fastest lap in the session with 3 minutes to go. As he crossed the line, he caught up to Leclerc, which he then had to slow down for, and since you always need temperature for the full wet tires, this ruined his qualifying, going out in Q2. In the race though, he managed to make up some positions even after a bad first turn. In Qatar, he didn't have a strong sprint qualifying or sprint, and the qualifying didn't go well either. In the race, when the safety car came out, he was one of 3 drivers to not come in and pit. He was up in P3, but because he slightly moved before the lights went out, he got a penalty, and Haas told him to come into the pits to serve it. They then served the penalty wrong, so had to come in again the next lap and serve it again. And just to add some information, the teams the next weekend were saying that they probably should have stayed out under the safety car, so Haas actually made the right call. They were just unfortunate or unlucky. Abu Dhabi was one of the few races where things went normally, and he qualified P8 and finished P7, showing that if he doesn't get as unlucky, he can still perform. Of course, this is one of his best races typically, so take that as you will. Unfortunately, Haas did miss out on P6 by only 11 points, which easily could have been made up without the misfortune. Haas, Ocon, and Behrman are all going to be looking forward to next season and hoping to be more fortunate. Good luck to everyone at Haas. You fought very hard this season. Now, I do have a theory of why Ocon was struggling a bit at the end of the season ever since the upgrades at Coda. It is that he might have been struggling to set up the car, so the sprints he would have a very tough time. Coda, far off. Mexico, points. Sao Paulo, very far off in quality, even though it seemed he was a little quicker in the race. Vegas, points. Qatar, he was pretty far off. And Abu Dhabi, much faster. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all soon because I am the most consistent F1 YouTuber. No, but I actually am going to be posting a lot more this year, so I'll see you around for that. I hope you have a wonderful day, and goodbye for now.